So, did anyone have any questions?
Rowan?
Quickly. Rowan. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, you can do cars. Yeah, you can do all kinds of race cars. Scott's going to say something awesome.
I don't know about awesome, but just like in terms of like what you can do with your comics, because I think a lot of people, they make comics, they write comics, they draw comics, but then they're like, okay, what do I do with it now? Some things you can do, you can always start your own blog and put the comics up there and get some and that's a good way to get a lot of feedback from a lot of different sources. And it's also good too, like just keeping like visibility, especially if you are interested in eventually working for like a publisher. Publishers do sometimes look at, like if you talk to a publisher and an editor, like they say, do you have a website? You can say, yeah, here's my website, and they can look at it and they can see your work there. So I mean, that's just a good way to increase your visibility. I do mini comics, which I publish myself, and I mean, they're really easy to do. Just, you know, you shrink down your art to like about 65%, and then just, you know, you can just get some Scotch tape, tape them on a piece of paper, go to a Kinko's or like a local printer, and I do mine at work. My work is nice enough to let me just come in as long as I provide my own paper and make my own copies. So I make comics at work. Not everyone's work is as accommodating, so I don't recommend doing that without permission. So so that's another tip I got is ask your work's permission before you do anything, so you don't eventually get fired. Oh, I'm sorry? And that's how much time we got? Oh, you got timekeeper. Oh, okay, cool.
Is that how many minutes we talk for, or how many minutes we have left? That's how many minutes you got left.
So how much is that? I can't read Roman. 25?
45.
45. Holy crap. All right. Well,
wow.
So, Rowan, do you have any more questions?
Yes, the gentleman in front, missing the facial hair that he obviously needs. I'm a fan of bearded Josh. All right. Yes, Josh.
We also did an anthology
Oh,
a year ago.
yes.
And we got it printed at the MU bookstore.
Oh yeah. You should be up here instead of me.
That's another option. It's really cheap.
It is. We actually did do an anthology piece which sold out of our first printing and is currently not going into a second print. No, maybe.
You can go to the bookstore and ask.
High demand.
They still have the file.
Sold out of
They'll print it for
four printings. Yes. No. Sorry. No. We did an anthology, and it was so simple. I mean, all of us did 3 or 4 pages, and we got published. Man, it was the coolest thing. I flew out to go to Washington for my little brother's graduation from high school, and I got to hand my dad a printed comic book that I was in, and my dad was just beaming with pride. It's an amazing feeling to be able to make your own comic books, and it wasn't even. Mine was like about like a doctor that had X-ray vision. Like that was it. That was just like, well, it was extremely funny and gory, but it was a good learning process because that's like the second one that I've ever had printed, and it was fantastic. So, Mick, what did you do for your? You weren't in the anthology. That was during your Buster Drake time. Oh, just lazy, ladies and gentlemen. And Scott, what did you do? What was the?
I did another test tube story. Test tube was the first comic I ever did back in 2004. So I've been doing this for about 8 years now. But yeah, and with test tube, I really wanted just to see if I could do a comic book. So my style was a little bit more simplistic, but I did manage to print like 4 copies or 4 issues of that series, and I was able to distribute it. And I mean, that's another thing too. When you do mini comics like I do, you can actually like go to comic shops. A lot of comic shops will carry mini comics, and you get feedback that way too. I mean, people find your mini comics. People go out and they'll like email you and tell you if they like them, tell you if they don't. A lot of people I've actually met through my mini comics and knew me through those. So I mean, that's just another avenue. If you don't really have like the technological know-how to like put your comics online, which I'm just now getting into like putting my comics online and doing web comics. If you don't have that, you can always just make mini comics, and that's another good thing to have, like to take to conventions and stuff like that. When you're meeting other people, you have a copy of your comic, and you can say, "Hey, here's a comic that I just did. Would you like to read it?" You know, you can go to conventions like this, and you can go around Artist Alley, and you can. Sometimes, like other people that do mini comics are willing to do trades. Like you can say, "Hey, here's a mini comic I did. Oh, cool. Would you like one of my comics?" And you can, you know, it's nice to have like physical product. Because it's almost like a calling card, you know, or a business card. You can give them a copy of your comic and you say, you know, here's something that I did. And even if you do a web comic, you can, you know, take the stuff you did online and on a web and you can make a mini comic out of it. And you can go around. I found it helpful. It's a good way to like network. It's a good way to like make contacts. It's you know, I'm a big fan of mini comics. I know like, you know, it's a lot easier and it's a lot more affordable to do web comics sometimes. But if you can afford to make a mini comic, it is rewarding, and it's nice to have that.
Just when you're creating comic books, if you're collaborating with anyone, find someone you're comfortable working with. And you know, I'm not saying you have to be the best of friends, but just make sure that you're very compatible and you know where the story is going. So.
Oh, there it is.
Oh.
The disadvantage to doing it by yourself is that if it sucks, there is no one else to blame.
Oh.
Because before I did mine as a webcomic, I took it into the Tribune and I submitted it to see if they'd want to print it, and it was terrible. And they told me it was terrible, and they were right, it was terrible. So I redid it, and that's when I put it online, and it was much better, but it was still kind of bad. And the advantage of doing it for, like, just for myself, essentially, for that year online, is that I learned a lot just about the process and about storytelling, like how you wanted to pace things, what I wanted to draw, what I didn't want to draw, how to... It was going to fall off, man. So I mean, it's like, it may start with an idea, like Buster Drake started as what I wanted to do, basically my version of Buck Rogers is what I wanted to do, and I learned a lot about, like, camera setting and layout and anatomy, doing backgrounds, a lot of stuff I had never wanted to do before. I started doing for the strip because it needed it, and I figured out that I didn't really want to do any of that stuff, and so I had to rework like my approach to the comic. I started using 3D elements a lot in the comic so that I wouldn't have to draw repetitive items like buildings or cars or anything. People. Yeah, I started doing it digitally. So that I didn't have to, you know, spend as much time with pen and paper. It was easier to color. If I did mess up, it was 5 seconds to fix, instead of like having to erase something or completely redraw something and re-ink it and scan it into the computer. But the digital process is quite a bit different when you're not looking at what you're drawing. If you like have just a tablet, there are like it's a different set of challenges. But wait, I started talking about something.
I don't remember how it started. You're talking about doing it digitally, man.
Doing it by yourself.
Right, oh, right, doing it by yourself. So, I mean, there was more freedom in how and what I did, but then if there's no outside, like, editing, no outside opinions, then it becomes easy to think, hey, like, what I'm doing is great, and it may not really be all that great. And it is important to bring in, not necessarily someone to control the creative process, but to give you an honest opinion of where they think it is or isn't going, and what you should do to correct that.
And that's, oh yes, in the red back there. The what comic? Homestuck? Homestuck? I've never heard of that. Sorry, no. I thought you said Homestar Runner, and I got really excited. Everybody, no.
I like me too.
He says, "What be soup?" No, but you know, no, I got nothing. No, what were you talking about? Create your own comics.
You
No.
have to own the blame.
On the blame.
Own the comic, own the blame.
Or you can get someone to do guest fill-in strips for you, like I did for Buster Drake, and which the downfall of Buster Drake was me doing those strips.
It lived long for memory.
Oh, did it? Was it that? No. But that is also something that there are a pool of artists in any city where you live, any major metropolitan area especially, but even places like Columbia, Missouri. When I moved here, I had no idea that the Mid-Mococo was alive and well. I belong to the KCCCN. Yeah,
KCCN.
The Kansas City Comic Creators Network, which Mid-Mococo kind of spawned from, or was was inspired by, and I was about in high school. One of my teachers' husbands was part of this group, and they brought me in, and I've been doing my own little superhero comics for several years, in high school, drawing my friends as superheroes and that sort of thing. And I was amazed to find that there were guys, my age to, 40, 50, making their own comic books and doing it very well. So, and then when I moved here to, Columbia, it would make sense. I just didn't think about it. But then, I hooked up with Mid-Mococo, and they have been just instrumental in just pushing things along and finding a group of people that share the same interests, and you guys can kind of like feed off of each other. And if you see something like Scott Zioko's making his own comic books, you're like, well, man, how do you do it? Like, who do you go through? Keith Chan, who's in the audience, has this awesome book called Keeley, and it's all like colored and digital and just rad. And and then Mick was doing his own like Flash Gordon fanfic thing, and it was the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. So, you can get inspiration from the people around you, and that's something that is very important. Is kind of finding inspiration in your own life, and people that share the same interests as you can help you out immensely when you're making your own comic books. So, Scott Zio goes next.
Yeah, I mean, with the Mid-Mococo, I mean, the biggest thing we wanted to do was just to get, like, a group of creators, because there is a bit of a comic book creator community in Columbia and areas around Columbia, not just Columbia, but Jeff City. I'm trying to think of where else we've had people come from. Fulton, yeah, we've had some people from Fulton. So, I mean, the group's kind of fluctuated over the few years, but I mean, we still have like a core group of people that meet once a month, and it's nice to have just that support system in place, just to kind of help inspire you and just to see what other people are doing, and to be able to just kind of have comrades in arms, almost just letting you know, hey, I'm not the only person doing this. There's a support system here, and we do other stuff too. Well, I mean, not. It's been a while. Well, we sometimes do other stuff. We used to. But we try to do a 24-hour comic once a year. We didn't do one. We did a 12-hour comic last year. I wasn't there for that, but we usually do a 24-hour comic on 24-hour comic day, and that's a good way to meet like other creators. And that's a really great exercise if you get a chance to do it. Basically, what it is one day a year. It's usually on a weekend from like a noon Saturday to a noon Sunday. The challenge is to create a 24-page comic in 24 hours. And it sounds daunting, but if you can get a 24-hour comic done, it is one of the best feelings, I think. It feels great. It feels like you accomplished something, and it kind of gets you motivated, kind of pumps you up and lets you know, hey, I can do this. I can make a comic. If I can do a comic in 24 hours, man, just think of what I could do, like, the rest of the week, or like a week after. And so it's a really good motivating factor. But again, it goes back to having that support system, having people around you doing the same thing you're doing. And like, if you can't find it like in your town, go online. There's websites and there's places you can go. DeviantArt, and maybe not even DeviantArt. I mean, just go out there and look and see, what are other people doing, and you can make contacts that way. But I think having a support system and having other people doing comics like you, I think having that is really it's not essential, but I think it's really important, and I think it'll really help, starting out, especially when you're looking for feedback. Just looking for like techniques, or just, not even that, just like looking for people to just say, oh gosh, trying to draw this page, I have no idea what I'm doing, and the person's like, yeah, I've had days like that. So it's nice to know you're not alone. You're not out on an island by yourself.
I mean, just definitely, just everything you said right now, just definitely. But I would like to add in that the 24-hour comic book day experience thing is just one of the most fun events you'll ever attend. Absolutely, because 2 o'clock, everyone's getting loopy, and by 5, you're definitely there, and you're just, you're there, but you're making comics, and you go back the next day, and you're like, why did I? But Batman wouldn't punch an elephant, but he did. So but the camaraderie and just the sort of fellowship that you get from hanging out with people that are in your area.